Welcome back to the channel. In this video I'm going to be showing you how to sew this nice beautiful pink gown behind me. It was inspired by the beige gown I saw on Pinterest by a brand called Cushiony, and they are sort of like a luxury women's wear brand, and I have done the pattern in a previous video here or here, so please watch that first before you see this one. I'm going to be cutting and sewing the gown in this video, trying on the top, trying on the skirt, making different adjustments because the fabric I use has a bit of stretch, so keep that in mind when you're making your pattern as well as when you are sort of, I don't know, sewing your own dress. So if you'd like to see how I made this dress, make sure to keep on watching, give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed, and let me know in the comment section down below, and let's jump straight into the video. If you haven't seen the pattern tutorial for this gown already, I'm going to link it somewhere on the screen and in the description down below, so please watch that first before you come back on here to see how I cut and sew this gown. So these are the fabrics I'm going to be working with. The first one is this soft blush pink fabric that has stretch to it. It actually has like tiny sequins sort of stitched into the fabric, so it gives it a bit of shine when you move the fabric against the light. I think this is what really made me fall in love with the dress, because I actually really like the fabric that I decided to work with. You need about 2 meters of your main fabric and 2 meters of your lining. I just got a simple plain pink jersey lining, so it works with the color of the dress. I also have a long dress zip. You can use something shorter because the zip doesn't really need to be that long. So I'm going ahead to cut out my dress parts, the skirts, the top, my lining pieces as well, so I have everything ready to stitch together. So I have my top parts. You would need a pair, that is 2, so when you crisscross you have your full top half. You also need your skirt pieces. You need to cut the front of the skirt on a fold, and then your back you need 2 pieces so your zip can go through that center back seam. I also have all of my lining pieces here for my top and my skirt. I just use the same pattern. The only difference is for my skirt I cut it about 4 inches shorter than the length of the outer skirt. The first one I'm going to be sewing is the dot that is on the side of the top. I'm just grabbing my pattern and placing it over the wrong side of the fabric, and with a pin pass through that dot point and mark with a chalk. So I'm going to do this for the 2 layers of that top piece, and then I'm going to be pinning together the dot in place. Thankfully I'd already cut the notches marking the ends of the dot along the side, so I'm just putting those notched points together and putting another pin closer to the dot point. I'm going to do this for the main top as well as for the lining, and I'm going to be sewing all of the dots in place. Because my fabric was stretchy, I didn't change much with my machine setting. I literally just stitched with the same one, remembering to do my back stitch at the beginning and at the end. If it's easier for you, you can tie a knot at the end of the dot. If you can't really do a back stitch, that would, go back to that point you wanted to. So now that we have a lot of our dots stitched and steamed, I'm going to be sewing together the lining to the main piece on the inner and on the outer end. So the inner is the neckline and the outer end is where the arm sort of hold is for the front and the back. I'm going to stitch this up on a 1 centimeter seam allowance, and I'm going to do this for both sort of like sets. I'm going to turn this inside out so I can see the right side of my fabric. This is going to help me conceal all of my seams and will just make the top look even neat on the outside and the inside as well. So next up we're going to be doing the actual crisscrossing. I'm laying this front piece connected to the back like so. I'm going to grab the other one and cross it over the front. And once I've done this, I'm going to stitch up the side seams like this. So pinning together that underarm point, I'm going to join the right side or the main fabric together. So I'm joining the back of that side to the front of this side. You can tell the front piece is the part that has the dot, and I'm going to do the same for the lining as well. Doing this in one stitch would just mean that you would not have any stitch or seam showing even on the inside of the garment. And even when you lift up your arm, because it's such like a revealing style around your armhole, when you lift up your arm you wouldn't see any stitch on there as well. So I'm going to repeat the same thing for the second side, and we're going to be sewing that up on a 1 centimeter seam allowance. You can start from either side, honestly doesn't really matter. And remember to point your stitches or your seams towards the direction that the lining is in, so that forces the seam to be tucked on the inside. So I've stitched up both side seams in place. I gave it a nice press to relax all of my seams. This is what the back looks like, because some of people are asking how did I do the back. It's a deep V on the back, and then the top has the crisscross detail, and then the keyhole under the bust like so. Okay, so I have put on the top half of the dress over this body fitting over this fitted dress underneath, sorry, just to check how it sits on. I'm very happy with the fit. I can tell that if I wear the right bra or sort of like cup underneath, I will be secure. So towards the back, if you just like pull this down slightly, you can see how it sits on the back as well. The only thing is this V is slightly more open than I planned it on the pattern, so I think I might have to double check the waistline of the skirts if I have to make it more fitted. And this fabric does have some stretch, so I'm just going to quickly pin on the skirt on me to see if it fits right, compare like the measurements of this waistline area, because they have to fit in order for it to connect well along the waist of the dress. But this is looking really nice. Oh, I need to find somewhere to wear this to after we're done with this lockdown. For the skirt, I've pinned together my front and back pieces in place along the side seam. I've put right sides together. We're going to be sewing on the wrong side of the fabric, sewing left and right on a 1 centimeter seam allowance. I'm going to go ahead and pin my lining pieces, so I know once I'm going to the machine I'm sewing all of the side seams of both skirts. So I'm going to take this to my machine and I'm going to be sewing on a 1 centimeter seam allowance, starting with my main skirt here. As you can see, remembering to do my back stitch at the beginning and at the end. I'm going to do this for the main skirt and for the lining as well. I have the skirt part of the dress pinned on like so, and let me just show you how much I need to get rid of in the back. So that's about 2 inches or 1.5 inches, since I still need to fix a zip there. So I can either get rid of some of that through the side seam. Actually don't know, I think I might do that. But the side seam is a little bit too far behind, so I think I might just take out half an inch from both sides or 1/4 of an inch from both sides, and then the rest I know I can get rid of through the center back seam. But yeah, I think when I was putting together the top half, I must have stitched in just a little too much, because this waistline of the skirt is a little bit bigger than the waistline of the top, and they need to actually match if it's going to sit nicely along the waist of the skirt. But I'm really happy with the length. I'm glad I made it like extra long, so if I went to wear heels with this, it would still look all right. I think my question is, I've worked on such a nice fancy dress and I have nowhere to wear it to, so I better not put on too much weight so I can still fit into this dress by the time I'm actually ready to wear this out. Next up, I'm going to be joining the top to the skirt along the waistline. I'm going in first to pin the waistline of the top to the waistline of the lining. The aim is to sandwich that top waistline between the lining and the main skirt. So thankfully I'd already put notches along the waistline to indicate where I want certain parts to go, and I'm just putting the right side of the main skirt against this layer that already had pinned top and lining area. And once that is all pinned, I'm going to be stitching it all together. Just remember to leave 1 inch at the beginning and at the end of this seam, because that's going to help you to actually fix your zip in place. I forgot to do it at the beginning, but I later went back to unpick that particular area, because if you don't have that place open, it will be difficult to finish up the zip on that top of the waistline. So I'm just finishing up this seam here. I gave my dress a nice press along the waistline to relax all of my seams, and it's looking really good already. Next up, I'm going to be fixing my zip into that center back seam of the skirt. So I'm just putting right sides together of the skirt. I am pinning that center back together. I'm only working with the main skirt at this point in time. Once we've pinned it all in place, I'm going to be stitching from the bottom to the point where I want my zip to actually stop, which is about 10 to 15 inches from the waistline. So now I'm going to pin my zip tape into the open edge of my skirt, and we're going to be sewing that zip into that open part of the center back seam. So I'm going to take this in my machine, and we're going to be using the narrow zip foot, so it just makes my life a whole lot easier. And I'm going to be sewing the zip into that center back part of the skirt, remembering to do my back stitch at the beginning and at the end. And for the other side, I'm going to start from the bottom because it's a whole lot easier to manipulate the fabric that way. And then when I get to the top, do my back stitch as well. So once that is done, I'm going to use my lining to then conceal that edge that has that zip stitched into place. So starting from the waistline, I'm going to put a few pins here so it's easier to work with. I'm going to put the lining over the zip like so. I'm going to pin the left and the right hand side separately, and then what we're going to do is we're going to stitch from the waistline, turn the garment towards the vertical direction, and then stitch down. So when you turn this inside out, it conceals that edge of the zip tape. So starting from the waistline like so, I'm going to sew for a certain amount, leave my needle in, lift the footer, turn the garment vertically, and then sew downwards up until the point where my zip head stops on that center back seam. So I'm going to do this for the left and for the right hand side, and then I'm going to trim that top corner where my zip tape is. Do this for both sides, and so when I turn this part inside out, it just looks a lot nice and smooth on that top. Making sure the left and the right actually matches up is something that I have struggled with for so long. Sometimes you zip it up and then you realize one side is higher than the other. You have to go back, unpick and resew to make it work, but I promise you will get there in the end if you are patient with the process. So I'm just going up to sew up that bottom end of the lining so we have it concealed even on the inside of the garment. Turn this inside out, give it a nice smooth press, and this is what the inside of the garment actually looks like. No seam showing, everything nice and smooth, and it looks even good on the outside as well. So the last thing you need to do is just to fold and sew the hem of the dress. Thankfully the lining is a stretchy fabric, so it wouldn't fray with time, so I just left the hem of the lining the way it was, but I went back to sew that hem of the main dress. So with that done, the dress is actually finished, and this is what it looks like on. Because I have lumps and curves, my body filled out the dress really nicely. I suggest using a nipple tape or an undergarment that doesn't show that bra strap at the back. Would look a lot nicer than the black bra I just wore here. But I wanted to show you guys what it looks like on, and I'm really happy with the outcome. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Let me know your comments, thoughts and suggestions down below, and I'll see you guys in my next one. Bye. It's going to be around my wedding. That's the only thing I can say for now. It's going to be around my wedding. I can give you a sneak peek online. I've been shopping wedding dresses.